Dearest Corey, look at this. The Lord has blessed me immensely today. I look at that guy and I go, he's funny.
I know him.
I know him. Hey, seriously, thank you. Thank you for the time. This is fun. I was excited about this.
What else with Corey, man? This guy can podcast like nobody can. What else with Corey, man? You will look deep inside of yourself and feel something you've never felt when he asks what else. What else with Corey, man?
You're strong like your father, even when you were scared. When I was in trouble, you never left me there. And you love like your mother, like there's nothing to lose. You're an unsung hero, so I'll sing this song for you.
Please welcome to the podcast, Luke Smallbone, one half for King and Country, and also my friend.
Oh, have we gotten, is it taken us 12 years to get to the point of you calling me your friend?
Now that we get to do something like this together, there's evidence that you and I, know each other. We've broken bread together. We've had deep conversations, and I'm calling you friend. You are calling me friend back. Then yes.
That's right. Oh, look at that. Guys, this is the best thing that could have happened to my day right now. It's taken 12 years. I'm not going to have a lot of friends if they all take this long.
So we are here today to talk about the new movie, Unsung Hero, in theaters in April. It's the story of your family.
Yeah, I mean, you know a little bit of this, Corey, but originally born in Australia, basically the last 12 years of King and Country, I've shared our family story, and you've heard it probably at shows, virtually at every show within reason that we've ever done. And I've had a lot of people come up and say, hey, you should write a book. And I say, guys, I'm homeschooled. I don't read or write very well, so I'm not writing a book. But movies, on the other hand, is something a little bit more, speaks to us a little bit more of a possibility of something that we actually could do. And so I went to a producer friend of mine in LA and said, hey, man, we worked on another film many years ago. You've always kept saying you want to work on another one. Hey, what do you think about putting this story, this idea into development and just seeing where it goes? And that was about 3.5 years ago. Did get put into development, got greenlit. Here we are. We've made a movie. The kind of the thesis, if you will, behind the movie is there's a quote from Mother Teresa where she says, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. And that's essentially what this film is about.
We're going to get into that. We're going to get into the weeds nice and deep. But I'm curious, how busy are you? You're spinning a lot of plates from the outside looking in.
You know what's funny? I think I get told that I'm busier than what I feel, and I think that's a good thing. I don't really view what I do as that I'm working all the time. I'm just kind of, I'm getting to chat with you. I'm getting to chat with my friend. And so that work feels, for the most part, it has its moments, mind you. But for the most part, you've always heard that, if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I'm not saying that's entirely my story, but it is a little bit. Like, man, I'm grateful to be able to tell people stories and converse about things that I'm passionate about. I mean, it's a real good. So I don't ever feel like, for the most part, the traveling is the hardest part. And I'm obviously not traveling today, but the traveling is the hardest part. But other than that, I enjoy what I do. And yes, some people might say I'm extremely busy. My wife occasionally says that, which is probably the truth, the truer person to ask. But after this, man, I'm going to go pick up my kids from school, take them to get a smoothie and take them home and do some other things around the house. So it's manageable.
So is there a secret or a science to balancing heavy touring band? Let's add film producer to the mix now. Let's also throw in husband and father. Have you set up some parameters? Do you have some real specific rules of, look, guys?
Yes and no. I mean, look, there was a time where I was working, way too hard. And you remember the season. I got really, really sick about a decade ago. And I think that lesson kind of taught me you were obviously working too hard when your body basically says enough is enough and you can't function anymore. That's the key indicator of you're working too much. And I think now, look, I'm probably turning into, and maybe this is just showing my age, I just take the Bible as its word now. So if it says that you take a day off a week, I'm going to take a day off a week. And so if we're doing things on a Monday, you're not going to find us really working on a Monday. And the other thing I would say is I bring my family with me, virtually everywhere we go. And so even this, next weekend, I think we're up in your neck of the woods actually, and I'm going to have my youngest son with me, for the 4 days. And so I try to bring family with as much as possible, and so that way it feels a little bit less work, work, work. You're just kind of living life with your kids. It just so happens to be working at the same time.
You gave a little bit of a backstory on the origin of this movie, but do you remember when you had the moment of, I think we could turn this into something bigger than me standing on the stage and giving the 8-minute version? Let's turn this thing into something else.
It's funny you say that, because I actually, the moment that it kind of hit me, I just made the phone call. So it literally was, I could probably track down when that phone call was. We had recorded a song called Unsung Hero, and it's essentially about our mother. And it just kind of hit me one day. We were working on there's many other films kind of in development, and there's another film that we were thinking would go before this one. But the problem is it's much more expensive. And until you kind of have a successful film, you can't really be called filmmakers if you just fail all the time. And so we needed to have something that actually worked. And I just said to the guys, I said, hey, I think that we can make this film. I think it will be incredibly powerful for the audience, but also I don't think this film requires a massive budget. And you can actually even see what's going on with Hollywood right now. In the film world, you either are making fairly cheap films, but marketing them heavily and you get a return, or you're doing the high intellectual property, the Marvel, those types of things, massive budgets. And it's kind of both of those films are the ones that are working, even though the Marvel ones are struggling a little bit right now. It's either the massive budgets or the smaller ones. It's the ones in the middle that you're spending $75 million, $80 million making. It's like Hollywood's dying there. And so for us to be able to make a movie that was relatively cost effective, it appeals to, Hollywood, it appeals to LA. They understand that narrative. And so in some cases, yes, when the moment hit me that, hey man, there might be something to this story, I just made a phone call, and it was basically immediately like, hey, yeah, let's pursue this. And within probably 6 weeks or so, we were on our way to trying to figure out how to get this thing rolling.
I've been such a movie fan, movie buff for so long. Yeah. One of my favorite moments about this movie coming out is going to be walking up to a theater, looking at the poster, and seeing your brother's name and seeing your name and going, I know them. If you don't mind, pull
like
back
Elf,
the curtain.
Like Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell.
I know him.
I know him.
Pull back the curtain on this new line item on your resume and LinkedIn. Movie producer. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's funny. A producer is a little bit of, I never want, guys, I struggle to remember lyrics on stage. So the idea of me learning lines is just not going to happen. I don't, it's funny. My natural personality probably is actually to be behind the scenes. It's not necessarily what I do for a living per se, but that's probably where I'm actually most comfortable. I have no problem having other people going ahead and me helping and shepherding that process. So in some cases, what I do for a living, is a little bit more out of my comfort zone in some cases. But a producer is really coming up with the concepts that you think will work, finding the stories that you think are worth telling, and then putting deals in places to actually see that vision take place. So what's weird about a producer is you're going to hire a director, you're going to hire actors, you're going to hire screenwriters, and then it's your job to make sure that they're all executing, but you're probably going to not do any of the actual directing or writing or, whatever. And so for me, it's actually something, it's in a little bit of my sweet spot, is to look at it a 30,000-foot view of what's working, what's not, try and ask the right questions and put people in positions of strength. And away you go. So yeah, it's in some cases, music has taught me all of the things that I'm probably using today in producing. I mean, I enjoy it. I'm a part of obviously a producing team. There's two other producers on the film, Josh Walsh and Justin Tolley, and been able to learn a lot from them, but also bring my know-how of, obviously I know the story very, very well. And I think I know the audience very well. I think I know what people will find interesting, what will move them. At the end of the day, I've never gone to a movie that I liked that I wasn't emotionally moved or compelled to change. And so it's finding stories that do just that.
Some of the language you just used, I've heard that same language from your father, that 30,000 foot view. Have you learned from him as he has guided, or partnered with you in your For King and Country career? Have you learned some things that you can obviously see that you've used on this movie?
I think if you're a son to a father who you are still communicating with, that you still call father, that you willingly call friend, and who you would say is wise, I think that who you are today is probably has an awful lot to do with how he shepherded who you were as a child. And so for me, I find myself as I get older, though I'm late 30s now, no, I'm not old per se, but I've got a little bit of history now. I've got a little bit of something to look back on. I find myself saying some of his sayings. I find myself believing those sayings and actually see that there's evidence of them being true. And so my dad, him and I are actually not that alike per se. I'm much like my mother, but we have a great relationship because I think I remind him of my mom, where Joel and Dad are almost the same person, except Joel doesn't have the years of wisdom that is acquired over suffering and failure. He has some of them, but he's only, he's about to turn 40. It's just a very different thing when my dad's 74, I think at this point, and Joel's 40. So Joel's still got a lot to learn. Where my dad's living out right now all of the mistakes and the things that he's had over the years. He's getting to learn from, and so hopefully that is passed on to me. You're gonna have to ask other people that question if that actually is true, because I'm not going to be there. So yes, I am. I'm all knowing and all wise. No, but my hope is that I have a finite understanding of my wisdom, so I can go and acquire the things that I don't know from somewhere else.
As you look back on this season of this movie, Luke, what was the biggest obstacle that you had to tackle as a producer and you came out awesome on the other side?
To get a little peek back behind the curtain. So part of the reason why I went to that producer friend to help us develop the script is he had a massive financer behind him. He had someone that was worth, in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And the hardest thing about, especially making faith-based films, is just getting money to make them. Our film was made for about $6 million, which is still enormously small compared to most films. Like Lionsgate is our partner and the studio partner in this, and they just kind of laugh at how little we spent with how quality the movie is, which is a great thing that you want. You want them to not know how much you spent. But here's what happened about 2 months before we started filming. And this man I'm talking about is still a dear friend, but they couldn't greenlight the project. And so basically they said, hey, we're not going to fund it. And so I'll never forget the phone call. I was in Houston, Texas, and had the phone call. And so I just went back to him. I said, hey, well, will you give us back the rights to go and make the film ourselves if you do this to us? Because this is a pretty massive blow. Now, the problem, and he agreed. The problem is then you've got to go raise $6 million in a very short amount of time. And here's the thing. You can't keep greenlighting, you can't keep sending stuff to places unless you've got money in the bank. So in the next week, we had verbal agreements to raise $6 million, which was probably one of the great miracles of this film. I mean, some of this stuff takes years and years and years to cultivate relationships to where you call up someone and say, hey, picture this. I've got a plan. Will you give me a lot of money? And that happened. And so that was probably the biggest hurdle. If that week prior doesn't go well, I don't think we're having this conversation today.
Your brother's playing the lead, playing your dad. Do I get to see you in this movie somewhere?
You will love this. This will be a little bit of a spoiler alert, but hey, why not? This is a true story. Don't think that the people that we were employing on this film were not of high moral standing, because they all were. There just so happened to be one that may not have been. All right. And so in this film, we have Stryper in the film. All right. And so we had all these actors come that were playing the band Stryper. That's where a scene takes place for us that was meant to be in the Sydney Opera House in Australia. And so anyway, you go get a lot of these actors that they don't have speaking roles. You just go get them locally. You look for the right look, those types of things. So anyway, we had a couple of these guys 2 days before the Stryper scene. And the lead singer that was playing Michael Sweet was an extra in another scene, all right? And he shows up high as a kite, all right?
Oh, no.
And so we had to fire him. And so then all of a sudden we've gone and we've got all these actors, and all of a sudden the lead singer of Stryper is not there. And so another producer was like, well, Luke, you got to do it. And I was like, man, I'm good. I don't need to do it. And then they were literally like, no, like we don't have another choice. Like you're doing it out of necessity, not even if you want to or not, you're doing it. And so in the film, you're going to see me with this flowing mane of hair. It's blonde coming down to my waist. Dude, at one point they had me bare chested wearing a netted shirt. And I was like, guys, this is never going to work. And so we changed the outfit a little bit. But yeah, I'm Michael Sweet of Striper. I call it an honor of a lifetime. And you know what's funny is I enjoyed it. And unless you know, like you do now, Corey, most people won't even notice, which is hopefully means that I sell it well enough to where nobody knows what's going on.
When I first saw the trailer, I immediately noticed another actor, Terry O'Quinn.
Yeah.
And I have to thank you personally for not allowing me near the movie set, because I would have begged him for stories about Lost.
But this place is different. It's special. The others don't want to talk about it because it scares them. But we all know it. We all feel it. Is your white rabbit a hallucination? Probably. But what if everything that happened here happened for a reason? What if this person that you're chasing is really here?
That's impossible.
Even if it is, let's say it's not.
And what happens when I catch him?
I don't know. But I've looked into the eye of this island, and what I saw was beautiful.
He is one of my favorite guys.
I've got one. If you want one, I've got one, but continue on with your question.
Of course. That was more of a statement. But if you have a story, I am on the edge of my seat.
So here's a great story. So Terry obviously plays John Locke. We just referred to him as John Locke on set the whole time.
Of course you did.
and I got to spend a lot of time with him. I actually probably got to spend the most amount of time with him on set because we had to do EPKs, and obviously he's our most notable actor. That as soon as you see him, he's still bald headed and all that sort of stuff. So Terry immediately, or at least, hey, I know that guy from somewhere. I got to spend a lot of time with him. He is an Australian, right? So he had to learn the Australian accent. And so on set, he was wanting to try out his Australian accent. So I just go talk to him, and he'd be an Australian. And he's meant to be playing my grandfather. So anyway, we had a lot of fun, whatever. And so I asked him, I said, hey, tell me how you got into film. How did you end up on Lost in the EPK? And he said, well, funny story. For the most part, his entire career was just a journeyman actor, always getting enough work to survive, never really quite making it. All right. And so he was a regular, I think that's what they call him, on the show Alias. I don't know if you remember that show.
I do.
He tells me that he's out riding horses with some of the other actors. I don't know if Jennifer Garner was on there or whatever. He's out there riding horses, and they start saying, like, hey, how much are you getting paid to do this? You're a regular, John. They obviously, Terry, we love you. How much are you getting paid? And on the horseback ride, they realize that they're paying the horses more than they're paying Terry to be on the show.
Wow.
And so anyway, so the actors stop freaking out. They're like, how dare you? This is a good man. He's a good actor. He needs to be. So they go to the producers and say, we demand that Terry gets paid more. J.J. Abrams, who did Alias as well, takes it up the flagpole, takes it to the studio, whoever was producing the thing, and says, hey, Terry deserves to be paid more. And they just said, no. He's doing perfectly fine as it is. Why would we pay him more? Like he's doing exactly what we hoped for him to do. And JJ apparently was devastated. And JJ went to Terry and says, Terry, I will remember you. I will remember you. Fast forward a few years, Lost starts. Who's playing John Locke? Terry O'Quinn.
Wow. Now I have more reason to like J.J. Abrams. Thank you very much.
There you go.
The movie's called Unsung Hero. Luke, did your team get the movie right?
You know what's funny? I've had this interesting journey with filmmaking in that obviously we've made another film before. It wasn't hugely successful, but we made a film called Priceless. And as a producer or director, if you're a part of a film, you have a marketing problem, right? In that, how do you get people to go see a film? So a lot of, particularly faith-based directors and producers, they kind of guilt trip their audience into some cases feeling the intensity of like, if you don't go see this movie, we're not going to be able to make any more of these movies. And if you want more movies like this, go see it in theaters. And I think that's a terrible motivation to go and do something that should be, it's art. It should be out of love. And so what I've had to ask when people like yourself ask me a question like that, I have this juxtaposition of do I tell them, Corey, you're going to love this film so much, and stop playing the same role. And if you don't go see it and if you go talk about it, or I have to say, man, I'm really proud of this. This film turned out far better than the script, far better than we could have ever hoped. But you have to go see it and make that decision yourself. Art is subjective. I've heard people rip a movie in theaters, and somehow I saw it on streaming or whatever later. I was like, I really liked that movie. At the end of the day, this movie demands an emotional response. You will leave there affected, for sure. But we should really do a follow-up interview after, and we could hash out what you thought, because I'm not going to be the guy that just says, man, you're going to just, whatever you do, I promise you, you're going to love it. I think you will, but I'm not going to be that guy.
Who needs to see this movie?
You know what's funny? I think that if you are, what I actually really appreciate about this film is you see yourself in kind of a lot of different characters, and that's what obviously good script writing should do, right? Is you should, if you're not like the lead, then maybe you're like the third or fourth down the casting, because they did this or that to help the lead, whatever. But I think this film is about a family who went through really, really difficult times. We went through some fire, and we came out the other side. There was a story that I showed this to a dear friend of mine, and I would call him a little old and crusty. And we had just done an edit of the film, and he said, I want to see the film. And he works in the film industry. He makes he sees all of the films, right? And so in some cases, it's like music. If you're in music, you get a little callous to what is really vibrant and not. And so anyway, we were like, do we really want to show him, like, this guy of all people this early? And anyway, we're like, well, we kind of need to, all right? So anyway, we sit down there, we show him the film. And obviously when the film ends, you've got this really awkward moment of like, what did you think? And you brace for it. And he looked up at me. And dude, I've never seen this guy get emotional in his life. But he looked up at me, he wiped a tear, and he goes, I want to go home and be a better dad. And I was just like, man, if people are walking away saying, I want to go home, be a better mom. If people are going away, I want to be a better dad. I want to be a better sibling. I want to be a better neighbor. That's my hope. And so I think if you think of yourself as one of those three things, a child, a father, a mother, a neighbor, I think that you're going to leave really impacted by it.
I have failed if we do not talk about For King and Country for just a little bit. Are we okay with that?
Absolutely.
I have recently, and you know this story, have found this new inspiration with What Are We Waiting For? It's kind of my mantra right now that started right before the beginning of the year. I'm curious, when was the last time you were motivated by your own music?
Yeah. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but, and you remember this season, it was early in our friendship. I got really sick a lot of years ago, and out of that came a song called Shoulders. It's just always been kind of my heart cry for my life in some cases, right? But it came from, and we even used the word sickness in the chorus, which we were told not to do, but we did anyway. I've been actually out of sickness for a lot of years, and hadn't really had much of a problem with anything. And earlier, a year ago, I just felt like I just felt like, hey man, I haven't had any problems with this. I think that this disease is done with, And so I got off some of the medicine, and about 2 months later, I got really sick, and I felt like I was meant to, honestly, even just spiritually, like, man, I think that God's saying I need to take a chance and trust him and get off this medicine. Well, I started getting sick again. And so I started getting sick again, and man, I was disappointed. I felt like I had heard that this was what I was meant to do. And I had to have that conversation. I was like, God, I actually feel disappointed by you. I felt like this is what I was meant to do. And here I am, and I'm sick again. And then one night I'm on stage, I get emotional. I'll get emotional thinking about this, but my help comes from you. You're right here pulling me through. It's, that's the scripture, but sometimes the gift of a song is you when you don't have the words to say, you just sing a song. And, for me, that's what I did. So that song was one that I won't, I will never take that song for granted for that purpose.
My help comes from you. You're right here pulling me through. You carry my weakness, my sickness, my brokenness all on your shoulders. Your shoulders. My help
What level is For King and Country right now?
Yeah, well, obviously we're having this conversation, so we're deep in Unsung Hero, all things Unsung Hero, man. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a little bit like, if we want to do another one, we need to go guns blazing, and we need to do all the things. We need to have all the conversations, or else we're not gonna get to do another one. We are doing some writing. I'm always cultivating ideas. I don't know if it's like this in your podcast, but I don't know if you have a thought and you're like, oh, I just need to take a note of that thought, or maybe I should interview that person or whatever. Yeah. And you write it down, right? We're always doing that. Maybe me a little bit more than Joel. I find myself in thoughts and in songs, and I love that. But yeah, I mean, look, it's getting time. We are going to release a inspired by project for this movie, Unsung Hero. And so in some form of fashion, there's a lot of covers on there, but in some form of fashion, there's a new For King and Country-ish album that's going to be unique. We're taking some chances. There's some risks on there, but it's not, an original album. And so that comes out, I think the day of the movie comes out. And so that will feel a little bit like, this King and Country's giving us some content to bridge the gap till the next record.
I got to hear a couple of the songs, including a song that is on it's on my top 10 favorite songs of all time. But I heard your version of Crazy by Seal. I can't wait to have that on my phone at beck and call. I just love that song so much. And
what's funny you say about that song. So part of the reason why I wanted to do it is because that lyric is, and if we're ever going to survive, we're never going to survive unless we get a little crazy. Man, that's kind of my mom and dad's story being in America. They weren't never going to survive here unless they got a little crazy. And so it's funny to take like a mainstream song that who knows what exactly they're meaning, but that lyric right there could not have been more applicable to what we were going through when we first came to America.
Well, I can't wait. Unsung Hero comes out April 26th.
That's right, April 26th. It's our parents' 49th wedding anniversary, and we did not plan that. I kid you not.
Wow.
That was all Lionsgate. Yeah.
That's some smart marketing right there, huh? Lou Smallbone for King and Country. The movie's called Unsung Hero. Listen to me. I'll say it to your face. I love you, pal. So great to see you, and thank you for answering all my questions.
Always a joy. Whenever Corey says, hey, I would like to chat with you about something, oh, man, you may make me cry from time to time, but it's always a good time. I'm very, very thankful for you, for your friendship, man, for your family, for being faithful in what you do, man. Never grow tired in doing good. That verse has meant so much to me of late, because sometimes you can get a little tired, but don't do it. Much love, and we'll talk soon.
What Else with Corey Mann, with your host, Corey Mann. Original music and theme song by Chris Cron. Share this episode with a friend, and thanks for listening.